Okay, well, I think we'll just go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening for what is a long overdue meetup, virtual meetup. Today we're talking about how to scale your data stack, both in terms of kind of from the very beginnings in kind of understanding when it's appropriate to start scaling your data stack, how to kind of get some of the initial stakeholder buy-in, all the way up to something a bit more advanced for larger companies. And so today we are very happy to welcome Karen Hsieh, the Director of Product and Data for AlphaCamp. He has almost 20 years of experience building products and data literacy for product teams to drive company growth. And we're also joined today by Jonathan Barone, data product engineer here at SDMP. He has 10 plus years experience building data pipelines and data apps to streamline decision making processes. So for tonight, what we'll be doing is we'll hear from Karen, who's going to tell us kind of about some of the learnings and advice and tips when you're kind of getting started with your organization in terms of implementation of data, how to bring it in and how to convince stakeholders that actually investing in a data backend is actually valuable. And then Jonathan will be kind of taking over after Karen to talk about some of the pain points of a bit more of a more mature data practice. And specifically from SCMP, some of the challenges that we're having and how we are solving them. So also feel free to drop your questions in the chat or in the Q&A section at any time. We will be saving the Q&A portion of tonight's event towards the very end. But feel free to drop the questions in whenever they come to your mind. If they are relevant to what the speaker is going over, they might answer it then. And if not, we'll do our best to tackle as many questions as possible after both speakers have finished their presentations. Okay, so with that, I will hand it over to Karen, who's going to talk us through looking at, the beginnings of data literacy and organizational efficiency. Take it away, Karen.
Sure, thank you. Let me share my slide so you can see my slide here. No? All good? Okay. Wait a second, I need to move this part here. Sorry. Okay. So I'm happy to be here. I'd like to share our experience to setting up the first data team. So my topic would be from self-service efficiency to create organizational knowledge. So I'm Karen Hsieh. I'm Director of Product as Data in APAC, and I'm also the moderator of dbt-local-taipei. So the agenda would be, I will briefly introduce about APAC since we are a small startup and quite different from SMCP. So also the experience, the journey we have is from without data team, we already established a data informed culture and how a data team established the modern NASDAQ, but still we have a lot of problem and how we deal with it. And final would be a Q&A. So APAC, we are an online coding bootcamp. So we transfer people from whatever background into data engineers, and we really care about data. So our culture, the first thing in our company's culture is outcome first. We will check about like if these users master in their program and do they find job in 3 months and how their annual income grows. So you see this data-driven things is part of our DNA. So, but before data team, since we want to be data informed and how it would be happen. So you will see there's a lot of master people in spreadsheet because they want to check data and they get used to look into data before they make the decision. They want to complete their job. So some people, they try to know how to write Excel formula, or even they will write some app script things we teach about coding. So some advanced colleagues, they may write a original spreadsheet, and the other colleagues, even they don't know how to write the spreadsheet from scratch, they will copy the formatted spreadsheet and then adjust some formulas. So you will see spreadsheets everywhere. And the problem would be there's no single source of truth since the original version may turn into like A version, A+ version, and a lot of difference. So the business logic is lost in a small cell of the spreadsheet and it's not scalable. But it do establish a data informed culture. People get used to look into data, they care about the numbers, and they like to do self-service. And it's actually the foundation for us as data team join. We don't need to educate, like, do you really care about data? Like, do you want to make data-driven decision? It's already done, it's already there. So how can we make it better? So for us, the data team, our initial goal is quite simple and straightforward. We want to resolve the problem that we had with these spreadsheets everywhere. So we want to have a single source of truth, and we hope this truth is rely on the tools, but not on someone's memory. Like we don't want to rely on the first person who create the original spreadsheet. And still, we want to have this working efficiency and keeping them doing self-service. We hope this way they can easier to be scaled and easier to pass this knowledge to the new colleagues when they on board. For the data team, there's 3 members. We have 1 data engineer who is very experienced in building this modern data stack. And we also have a new analytics engineer and me as a product manager. So we think, okay, modern data stack is cloud native, and we decided it would be like ELT, and we decided these tools quickly, and we use Airby to extract data or from our operational database into the BigQuery, and we choose BigQuery to load every data, and we use dbt for transform, and we use Metabase for visualize. It's done. It looks like, okay, we decide the tool, we decide the pipeline, and we just wait and make it happen. So the initial plan is still quite straightforward. We want to build the modern NASDAQ. And we think once we define the working scope, like the data team would do the transfer and provide the clean data, and each team, they can do the analysis on BI. So we only need to like provide the tool, tell them how to use it, and they can still do self-service. So that's our goal. And do we really happily ever after? So obviously not. So that's why I'm here sharing all these experience. We do have a good signal that before we do the training, some like few colleagues in our team, in like other business team, they already built a beautiful dashboard on Metabase and helping them to get rid of the spreadsheet, and they are very happy to get this auto-generated and up-to-time dashboard. But we still have a lot of problems. And the problems will be like from the rest of the colleagues. They think, your life is okay. I'm good at spreadsheet. I want to look into it. Why you want to ask me to use a BI tool and talk me about SQL, even encourage me to learn? I feel unsafe. They think about like, do you really make my life better? Do I really get rid of this spreadsheet? And they feel unsafe because they don't know how this number comes out. And they don't know what action they can do if they have some question about the reports or the numbers. And the biggest problem is when they look into the numbers we provide, they will say your number is wrong because it doesn't match mine. The logic is actually like your number is not familiar with me, so it is wrong. And we will dive in that problem, and the ultimate result is no one wants to use the dashboard. Though we have a good signal and we co-work with one operation person to build the dashboard, and it took her 3 weeks, but the rest of the operational people, they don't want to use it. The reason is they think the numbers are wrong, doesn't match their numbers, is unfamiliar with them. When we look into the reason, we found out it's not about the number, it's because there's no alignment in the same metric. And it's like, surprisingly, even people, they are talking about the same metric for months, even for years. And when we look into the numbers, then we realize they are not aligned. The classical example would be like revenue. When we are talking about the revenue, the definition, they will call revenue the same name, but definition may change due to different scenario. For example, since we are selling course, and the course we have like different semester, say if we sell course with 3 semester and each take 4 to 6 weeks. So what's the revenue? Is that the revenue when user pay for the 3 semester, say like $1,000, and is that just $1,000 as a revenue, or is the revenue we recognize after the service is provided? For example, though user pay $1,000, but he only enrolled the first semester at the beginning, so we can only recognize $400 as the first semester as revenue. And the other things like when we are talking about the revenue is that with or without tax, it would have 5% difference. So we know the reason is because of the definition, but people just use the same name, revenue, in like different scenario. So for data team, we have another problem is then how can we collaborate with others? How can we decide it, or who will decide it when to use what definition, what is the correct metric? And we don't know about the scope, like, do I need to understand every detail about the operation, and do I need to get involved into their scenario so I know they are talking in different numbers, and I can provide different calculation for these numbers. And the whole process looks like we thought we understand, we thought we clarify and gather all these needs, but when we provide the transform table to a team, different person in the team may have different confusion and they want more customization. It feels like no end. We need to go this back and forth and checking several times. So we decided to change our plan, and we think it's not just about data, it's not just about clarify the definition and do the math. So how do we approach these problems? We go back to check the initial goal. Yes, we still want to have single source of truth. And yes, we still want people to do self-service and scalable. But at the initial plan, we defined the working scope very clearly, like we understand their scenario and asking them why they want for this data, and we fulfill their needs. But there's too much back and forth. So we revised this. We want to be the partner with business team. And it means we have this partnership. We want to understand why they are looking for and what's the questions they want to answer. They don't need to tell us the definition, but we can observe from their day-to-day work or how they present their numbers. So we need to do more product discovery in a PM sense. Product discovery means we want to see the things and in the user's eye and put in their shoes to understand what's their scenario. Then we decided what we want to deliver to them. And also from the business team, we asked them to identify one person who can support us to understand their work and also has the ownership to get things aligned. So it would have a better partnership between data and business team. And the first thing we try is to pairing people, since this partnership would take time to establish. And for data team, we also need to get familiar with that domain. So for example, we try this in a functional way, since this is the first escape we want to provide our service. So for the functional, we try this in the operation team first. We have a data person and we ask them to provide a data person. Then we try to understand each other's mind better so we can collaborate better. So the functional team would have a tier 1 data person who have a little sense about data and who can better communicate with us. And also they will teach us about their domain, why they are looking for what number and how. And we also need to share what's the partnership, what do we view in this and what's the stage of this journey with the business team so that we can build the partnership and earn the trust. And once we have a success case in one functional team, then we can duplicate to another one. So they would like to know, from the business team, they would like to know what the journeys look like. So we are actually here at the first stage. We found out there's alignment issue. We found out there's a way that we need to understand them more. So we are actually at the first stage to see the facts. And we're hoping that after both sides understand and get aligned, we want to have some actions, for example, like experiments to do on the data, and we can get the feedback from data. So then we can go into the third stage, get some insights. And the ultimate goal is not just replacing the spreadsheet by the BI tool, is to create organizational knowledge. And they will want to know like how long we can get there. So we provide this like estimation of timeline. It would be like 1 to 3 months to understand and get familiar with each domain and provide some experiments and really run the experiments to get the insights. And ultimately, we can create this knowledge. So it's really take time. It's not just like building a modern data stack and it's done. It takes time and some partner and to understand each other's. So the ultimate goal is to empowering people to create the organizational knowledge. So I'm finished here, and sorry, I didn't have time to look into the questions. So if you have any questions, you can just you can unmute yourself or type in the Q&A or chat.
Great, thanks so much, Karen. So we'll take questions. We'll answer the questions at the end.
Okay.
After Jonathan. So if you want to give a quick plug for the Taipei DBT real quick.
Oh yeah.
Meetup.
Sure. So I mentioned I'm the moderator of local dbt-Taipei, and there's a Slack community. You're welcome to join. We will have some great discussion and comparing notes here. We talk about everything about data, not limited to dbt only. And we have a meetup on March 4th. And there's 2 speakers. They are all leader of analytics engineers. So you are welcome to join this meetup online. Thank you.
Awesome. And we'll drop the links for both of those in the chat in just a minute. And Karen, thank you so much. We'll come back. We'll bring you back on for the Q&A in just a little bit after Jonathan is done. So now I'll hand it over to Jonathan, our resident data engineering guru, talk about some of the challenges that a more mature data practice like we have at SCMP is facing, and also how we're going about solving some of these issues. So Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you, John. Actually, do you want to start first with the introduction of South China Morning Post, and then I will continue on the presentation?
Yeah, can do. So why don't you bring up those slides?
Yep. Right, let me just slideshow. Right. Can you see the slide?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let me just give a quick agenda. So we're going first to introduce SCMP, the data team, and myself. Then I will talk about the modern data stack, the data stack that we use at SCMP. I will introduce the analytics problems that we encountered and drove adoption of new tools. I'm going to do a deep dive on semantic layer. What is it? And which tool did we choose for our semantic layer? And then the question at the end. Over to you, John, for introduction of SCMP. Thank you. Oops. Okay.
Right. So thanks, Jonathan. So yeah, the SCMP has been around for quite some time. We were founded in 1903, and we are Hong Kong's oldest and longest running English language newspaper in Hong Kong. And at one point, we were actually the world's most profitable newspaper as well. We began our digital transformation in earnest in 2016. Actually, SCMP was one of the first news publications, online news publications, to begin to put up a paywall. And we were one of the first to really offer a subscription, a digital subscription model to our readers. However, in 2016, our direction shifted drastically, and we got a lot of support after we were purchased by Alibaba to really accelerate and catalyze our digital transformation. And so that's really kind of where our digital transformation began, was in 2016. And at that point, we were still really working in Excel sheets, not even Google Sheets, but Excel sheets. And now we're at the point where we're pulling in massive amounts of data, and with that comes unique challenges. But our vision for the company is to elevate thought. So we are, of course, a news publication, and so that's what really the value that we want to bring to our customers and to our readers. And we also want to lead the global conversation about China. As I'm sure all of you know, China really is at the center of much that's happening in the world these days. And the SCMP, our reporters, our editors are uniquely positioned to cover what's happening and to bring that story to the rest of the world. But we are based in Hong Kong, but we have journalists and editors as well as other employees around the world, including mainland China, Singapore, Africa, the United States, Europe, and a few other places I'm probably forgetting as well. I think that's it for the introduction. Well, we can talk a little bit about our data analytics department. So our data analytics department is not quite as old as our digital transformation. So again, it's something that got started back in, I think, 2017 or 2018. Jonathan actually was one of our earlier members of the data team. He quit but then of course couldn't stay away. So and he came back last year. So we are a relatively large team, I think, compared to some other companies. But given the size of our company as well as the needs that we have, I think that we could easily argue we don't have enough people. But similar to Karen's organization, we're analysts, we're engineers, we also have a data scientist as well. And so it's really up and down the stack. And again, we're kind of at the point now where that stack, unfortunately, was not maintained as well as it could have been. And we're dealing with some pretty complex issues. Jonathan has been working really hard to address these issues. And I'm super excited to hear what he has to say tonight, as well as share with everyone else kind of how honestly Jonathan has been doing most of the work in fixing some of these problems. So I'll hand it over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, John, for the intro. So yes, I'm a data product engineer. I have rejoined SCMP, as John just said, at the end of 2021, and with the goal to solve some of the analytics scalability issues that the data team is facing. And yeah, so a little bit about the data stack that we were having up to 2021. So we basically have a standard stack at this point in time. We had an ingestion, storage, modeling and transformation and visualization layer. So we are using Google Cloud, and one of the first components we used was BigQuery to quickly create our tables, and rapidly we also deployed Airflow to be able to schedule all of the pipelines that we started adding, pulling data from various systems and third-party tools or APIs. And on the visualization side, we started with Tableau, then we had also people putting the data in Google Sheets, and Tableau was also Tableau, and Looker Studio was also another dashboarding tool that we quickly added. And in 2022, so early 2022, we added two more layers to the stack. We added a modeling layer, so we adopted dbt, and a semantic layer. And for this, we chose Cube. So yeah, I'm going to explain more about these two tools. So I will not spend too much time on dbt. There's a lot of presentation on it. You can find a lot online as well. But I will actually spend more time on Cube, on presenting Cube and presenting the problems that Cube can solve. But a bit word about the origins of the problems. So 5 years. So we started in 2017 to build the stack, and before that we were using Excel, various Excel documents. And then we started using GCP, and then after 5 years of creating tables, creating many pipelines, problems started creeping in. We faced moments where technical debt was getting quite high. You can see that this is the number of partitions we create on dbt on BigQuery, and so yeah, the number kept increasing drastically. So we are facing data issues, data scalability issues. Like I will explain to you, but basically when you look online how to solve them, you will see that people are telling you have to choose tools from the modern data stack, but it's not always that simple, right? And you have to know the problem. You have to understand the problems deeply to be able to choose the right tools. So for solving your problems. So the first problem that we had is that it's difficult with a number. We had honestly, if you open Airflow, you will quickly see that we have around 500 jobs, and so it becomes, it becomes very, very difficult to know, what those jobs are doing now. It just, we encounter like a situation of pipeline spaghetti. And so if you want to know, like from a dashboard, you want to know where does this data come from? Where's this data coming from? Or reverse, if you're on the source and you wonder if you can drop a column, for example, what's the impact of doing such operation on your BI tools, on your reports or dashboards? This is a problem that many data teams face, and lineage is getting data lineage is crucial for that. And so dbt here is actually coming out of the box with a solution where with the lineage, you get lineage from simply developing your queries. With dbt, lineage is you get the lineage directly from compiling all your code. So you can view the lineage. You can also use it programmatically to get answers to your questions, such as like, okay, what are all the dashboards using this particular table? So this is very handy when you need to do, when you need to review any, when you need to do operations at scale on your tables, right? So you just need to use the macros that dbt comes with. So dbt is open as an open source component called the dbt core, where you define your SQL queries in Jinja, which is a templating language, and SQL, and using the macro that comes out of the box, you get the lineage directly. So this problem is actually quite easy to solve. There's a lot of documentation on dbt website, also a lot of blog posts, videos. So it's quite easy to deploy it. Another problem that we are currently actually solving, is that we do not have a single source of truth, because after years of defining reports, dashboards, you define metrics for your reports and dashboards, and actually adding or deleting a column across reports becomes quite painful to do. You have to really scope such an operation. You have to know exactly all the tables you need to modify. You need to know where your metrics are defined. We also face the risk of inconsistent numbers because definition of metrics may vary slightly from one report to another. And we often duplicate ETL pipelines because tables are using, we are creating a lot of one-off tables for different reports and dashboards, even though we are using the same metrics, and we will know why. So origin of the problem for this particular problem of single source of truth is the BI tools are too slow, and also the problem of non-additive measures, and I will explain those two. So BI tools are too slow. What do I mean by that? Is simply you have a report open, so you update your filter, and then the report takes too long to refresh, and so you switch because it's getting too long. You can't really use the report. You can't be productive using it. So this is an issue. What's happening in the background is that actually you may have in the backend you have expensive operations like an expensive join. Your query is joining between two data sources which are massive, and so it takes time to process. The problem of non-additive measures. So for this, I will explain first what is an additive measure. If we take the example for South China Morning Post, we report on page views, right? Page view so we can sum page views, and will always get a correct result. So let me take an example here. So you have imagine that you have the table on the left with different users and the article that they've seen on each day. If you want to know the daily page views per article, you just sum. You get, for example, for the article X, there is 2 page views, one from user A and one from user C on 1st of December. If I want to get the total page views across the 2 days, so 1st of December and 2nd of December, I can actually reuse the output from the first step. So I can sum already calculated page views, and it will be correct again. So here in this example, if I reuse the output of my daily page views to get the total page views, I will get 3 page views for the article ID X, and it's correct. But if I do that with a non-additive measure, it's going to be fine. So I will show you for why with the example of unique users. So in this example, if I look again at the article ID X, so 1st of December, 2 users, so that article, so user A and C, so unique users equal 2. Okay. But if I use the output, the daily unique users, to get the total unique users, I will get a wrong result, because article ID, so on the total unique users per article, article ID X gets 3 unique users. But no, actually, if we go back to the raw data, so my first table, I can see that article X has been seen only by 2 users, user A and user C. And user C saw that article twice. So 3 page views, but only 2 unique users. And so I can't use my daily unique users to get my weekly unique users or any other aggregation. So with this problem, that problem actually forced us to create a lot of tables. We can't reuse a pre-aggregated table for our report. We need to get all the variations of unique users filtered on any potential dimension, or simply aggregated at different levels. So, aggregated per country, aggregated per day, aggregated per week, months, etc. So we hoped to only create one aggregated table on which we could reuse for a lot of queries that the report will generate. But no, we are forced to create many tables instead. And so with that, we do not have a single source of truth. As you can see in this example, we have such situations in Airflow where we have several pipelines that are reading from the same data source, and they also recompute same metrics, but with different, probably different dimensions, different filtering. So this is why it's very hard to maintain the definition of our unique users. And this is where the semantic layer comes in and helps us. So what is a semantic layer? This is a layer between your data storage, so your data warehouse, and your BI tools or your data visualization layer. The semantic layer has actually 4 components. The metrics layer, where you define your metrics, your dimensions, and also which tables do you access. You have also the access control component that lets you decide which users, what data different users can see. You can set permissions at group of users, like department level. We have also the caching, which is actually very important here, especially for us at South China Morning Post. We have also the APIs. So API, all the different serving methods for your reportings, BI tools, apps, etc. dbt is actually also building a semantic layer. You can see, so you can, in this diagram, you can see the raw data, the data warehouse, the semantic layer sits on top, and then all your different reporting apps, notebooks will actually use the semantic layer to access the data. And how does it work for you as a user? Actually, as a user in a BI tool, we form a query where we actually tell, okay, this is the dimensions I want, the metrics I want. This is my time component. You know, like you tell it how many days do you want this query to scan, at which granularity, day, week, month, for instance, and also any filters. Then actually the semantic layers takes this query and generate a SQL query. Based on that, then the SQL query can be run, and you get the data back. So those are different vendors building a semantic layer. So we have Transform, which is actually acquired by dbt very recently, like last week or 2 weeks ago. They announced it. There's also Cube. They all have actually they almost all have an open source offering and also a cloud version. There's also good data and metric. So we decided to use Cube because they are around like for at least 3 or 4 years, and so they're pretty mature. There's a lot of people collaborating on their open source offering, and we deployed it on GCP, and so yeah, it comes with the 2 main components, the API and Cube Store. And actually, so the API is responsible for serving the data to to the various clients that you may use, like BI tools, Google Sheets, so for us, Looker Studio, Tableau, also a custom JavaScript web app. And Cube Store is actually responsible for caching the data and accessing the data in data warehouse, and passing the data back to the API, which pass the data to the client. So the way we interact with Cube developers, we have to, for us developer, we have to define schemas. So it's instructions, configuration for Cube to know how to extract the data from the data warehouse, and how to, instructions on how to form the SQL query. So we define dimensions in each cube, because we can tell Cube, okay, this is going to be a cube for our users. This is going to be a cube for our article. This is going to be a cube for our events. And then we tell for each of those cubes what are the dimensions, what are the measures, and then how do you define your joins between cubes. But the key ingredient and why we chose Cube is the pre-aggregations. So it's actually, and pre-aggregations here relates to the caching feature that I mentioned for semantic layers. So basically, pre-aggregations means you actually run the query and you store the output, and then that output will be served to your to your BI tools. So this is a caching like you can have with Tableau, for example. But here the beauty is that this caching layer is available for all your tools. So this is different, where traditionally BI tools will have their own caching, but that caching cannot be reused. So we use pre-aggregations, and the way we will go about using pre-aggregations, that first we define pre-aggregation in each cube schema. So we tell, okay, I need this particular query. So if I go back to my example of unique users for each article ID, so I will instruct, I need the query with dimensions article ID, measures users, time dimension, whatever the column, the date column that you use in your table. I want it, so I want aggregated at a week level, and you refresh that aggregation every day. Then there's a scheduler for that. It's for us, we use, Cube is actually handling all of that. Cube Store is handling it for us, so we don't have to manage it. We just instruct, the refresh in the refresh key, the frequency of the refresh, and then using that now. The query that was using like 30 seconds or more before now takes actually 1 second and sometimes less. So it feels like instant. And so finally, we're getting our analytics scaled. So the situation that I showed you before, where we had metrics redefined in several pipelines with a lot of tables, now we can simply use one unified layer where we can where all the reports can fit from, provided that you have connectors that can connect to Cube. And so now we can say that we have a scalable single source of truth. We are in the process of migrating our reports and dashboards to it, and deleting a column now is just about making sure that column is defined once in your schema. So schema is basically code. It can be YAML or JavaScript for Cube. So it's version controlled. It's you get all the benefits from software engineering best practice. We are getting consistent numbers. It's no more a headache for us to maintain pipelines anymore. So we no longer duplicate now tables in BigQuery. Yeah. So that's it. And yeah, we are hiring. We are hiring a senior data analyst to join South China Morning Post data team. And that's it for me.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. So just reflecting on kind of what Karen and Jonathan presented, I think from what I can tell, one of the big differences between SCMP and Alpha Camp, perhaps, and Karen, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but from where I'm sitting, one of the issues that we have, and one of the reasons why we haven't been able to scale as quickly as we wanted, is in part because of knowledge transfer. For whatever reason, the data team at SCMP, the churn rate is quite high. I mean, it's not. I mean, we have great people, but the truth is that in Hong Kong there's a high demand for people with data skill sets. And so because of that, it's not too hard for people to find other jobs. But they put in their 2 or 3 years, and then they kind of move on, which I think is normal. But then we're kind of stuck with, why is this table the way it is? What is this metric over here? I thought it meant this other things. I'm just kind of curious, Karen. Do you have have you experienced a similar problem? And if yes, I mean, how do you manage something like that at a smaller scale?
Yeah, I would say because we are only team for like 1 year, so we didn't, foresee this experience really happening. But we do have some question like if this, for example, if someone build a pipeline and do the transform, and it's hard for another data analysis to get to know how he deal with this transform. I mean, there is code review, of course, but you really need to get to understand the business logic it would take some time. So for dbt, we can add some description on each column. So we can let other data analysis and also including the end user to understand what's the column mean in different, what's the meaning for different column. So that's the way we pass the knowledge forward. But of course, it would take our effort to write the document and take our effort to describe the scenario in the PR review and try to let other people understand how we define and why we have this metric or not, and what's the business logic. I can foresee there may be some complicated conversation or more time to understand once we have like more than 500 tables as you do.
Yeah, I think that's one of those. I mean, business logic, I think, is kind of the key there. So personally, I think I forgot to introduce myself, but I'm a business analyst. And before, sorry, Jonathan, can you just go to the last slide of your presentation? I don't think we need to keep the QR code up this whole time. So before I joined the data team here at SCMP, I didn't have any experience programming. And what I'm quickly kind of realizing, especially with some of the problems that we're facing right now, which Jonathan is working to solve, but we're not actually there yet. So I still have to figure this stuff out. Is programming for business logic, and we're dealing with some requests, some questions that are really good questions, really good business questions. The questions make so much sense, and yes, we would love to find an answer to that, but it's going to take me a week. It's an exaggeration, 2 or 3 days to just do the coding, because the way the data itself is actually structured, it's not structured in a way that the question is easily answerable. And then for us, we're kind of coming up against this problem. Okay, so how can we kind of get more analysts or engineers involved and to speed up some of these requests and be able to get answers into the hands of our stakeholders as quickly as possible. But the problem is, how do you communicate business logic? How do you communicate business knowledge to someone else whose expertise is different from yours? I mean, the reason that I'm handling this request is because I have a certain expertise, and so then I can go off and do it. I'm wondering, does AlphaCamp have any best practices around that, or is this something that you kind of help others with?
Yeah, so I found a way that from my experience, when we want to answer the question, though they may have different dimension or different time frames, say like weekly, monthly, but they do have the similar source. For example, say about the article, the page view of the article, maybe they want to calculate this number in a weekly or monthly basis, and different from like unique user or like total user. But the source, the source would be the same. The page view of this, the page view and the username and the count, the time, the source is the same. So my approach is we have a very detailed spreadsheet, detailed database. For example, it would be like a page view event, what article ID, the user ID, and the timestamp. And from that source, we can break it down into like monthly or weekly. And of course, the same issue still happen. If we want a weekly unique user, that's a transform. If we want a monthly user, that's another transform. That's the same thing. But at least we all comes from the same source. We have this scenario happening, for example, like the revenue, or for example, like the orders numbers. We use the same way to deal with this different time frame or different scenario for business.
That's great. Thanks, Karen. So we have a question from, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing this, Ernisia. Have you looked into single databases where one database can be used for OLTP as well as OLAP, such as single store DB and Databricks? If yes, what do you think of them? Can they really solve the problem of data inconsistencies after data transfer? Throw that to Jonathan first. Jonathan, can you answer this?
Sure. So OLTP and OLAP, so those are like two different types of database. So OLTP is traditionally used for storing like transaction, and it's mostly used like on your, let's say, your product, you know. So this is the backend of your product, your main product. But OLAP, so those are like a more analytical database. So like BigQuery, like Snowflake. So on the problem of inconsistencies of numbers, actually, in our examples that I showed or at SCMP, I mean, inconsistencies, they originate from BigQuery, within BigQuery itself. So from the OLAP database, you know, like we are storing like definitions of we are redefining metrics in different tables inside of BigQuery, inside of the same database. So the idea of here was to use the semantic layer to just pull the definition inside the layer and let the layer create your SQL queries on the fly. Yeah.
Cool.
So
Karen,
not too sure about the, no, I didn't use Databricks, so I'm not sure about the OLTP versus OLAP and how it could solve the same problem.
Me either. Sorry, I never used single store DB or Databricks, so not sure if I can answer this question correctly. But we do the same thing. We load every source data into BigQuery. So we have this raw data, whether it's come from like our original operational database or from like third-party tool, for example, like Typhoon or Notion or like Zoom even. So we have all this data source into BigQuery, and then we do the transform from there and also like get back all these transform data still in the BigQuery.
Great. Well, TT has a question. Given that there are many challenges around data analytics on task complexity and talent shortage, what are your views on outsourcing the workload to external tech experts, consultants, or automation technology? Karen, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, of course. That's why AlphaCam is there. So AlphaCam, we do have some program about data, and we found that different kind of people. Like one is they are already engineer, and mostly from backend engineer, they would have some like interested in data. So that's a way they would like choose their path from like backend engineer and to a data engineer. And the other way is that people who are the data person, just like me, I'm not an engineer, but I really need to look into data and I want to do self-service. I want to, you know, stop waiting the engineering's pipeline to get the answer. So another track would be some people like marketers, PM, or even like front-end engineer. They want to get familiar with their users, how they look, they view their product, they develop. So probably they may not want to change their career path. They don't want to become the data engineer, but they do want to learn about data. And actually, that's a good thing for data because we all know like data requires some business domain. So if you have some kind of domain knowledge, that would be better for you to have a better sense or how to analysis, and you know how to transform this business logic in a better way. So we do provide program or event, and we want to help people join this industry.
Fantastic. So yeah, just a reminder to our attendees, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop those in the chat or in the Q&A part of the Zoom app. Jonathan, what are your thoughts? Outsourcing to tech, to other tech experts or consultancies or automation technology?
Yeah, Actually, it can work. It depends on how you scope your projects. First, it depends on what task and what challenge, what projects you want to outsource. I think if we were talking about data engineering projects, probably like projects around ingestion. So ingesting your data in BigQuery is pretty easy to to outsource. But then, yeah, it really depends, because when you need to be very close to business, maybe you don't want necessarily to outsource at that moment. So yeah, it really depends on the type of project.
So I guess, Jonathan, I guess my big question is kind of looking back, kind of where SCMP is now. Looking back on kind of your time your first stint on the data team. Is there anything that you think that you would go back and change, like with the knowledge you have now? I mean, obviously hypotheticals are kind of dumb questions, but I'm just thinking, like, is for our attendees, thinking about, like, if they're going to be trying to scale their data practice, or maybe they're going to be joining a company that has a larger data practice or is about to scale. What are some things like you think that, like, early on, if at SCMP we had caught earlier, would have made things a bit easier for us?
That's a very good question. It's not as easy to answer, but I think there are some, there are things that are that you can't really act on, like as you said, turnover, can be high, and this happens, I think, in probably almost all companies. So knowledge is easily lost. That's the thing. But I will say, if you can build a culture around documenting, solid, being solid on documentation, you have to do it as early as possible, because otherwise, when you start having more and more, data assets, or dashboards, reports, pipelines. When I mean data assets, is any component that use data in your data infrastructure. Also analysis, documenting analysis is not easy. So start having a framework around that as early as possible, so that you can reiterate on this framework as you grow and then as you add complexity. Because if you tackle that like many years down the road, it becomes really, really challenging. It's not impossible. You can use tools like, so honestly, like adding dbt actually partly solve that some of those problems, around documentation, because you really document as you code. So that's something that people do it without realizing they are doing documentation. So we all know how painful it can be to document after the fact, right? So like it's just too much maintenance to do. No one wants to do it, right? So yeah, if you look carefully at what those tools offer, to you, and if you are able to compose them solidly, to have to document everything you do, I think scalability issues should be like less a problem, in my opinion. Yeah.
Right. And so as a follow-up, TT is asking, each data analysis and extraction takes time. Are there any tactics you would recommend to speed things up?
I can go first. I would say, of course, as data team, we all want to have a clean data that we can do something about that. And we'd like to view these numbers turn into a meaningful analytics reports or dashboard. But I was saying we need to get the outcome, what kind of business question we want to answer and what is valuable to the end user. Just like we don't want to build a product that no one wants to use it, though that would be beautiful and like fulfill our passion. But we still want to like make it really meaningful to the business. So I would go like, for example, the easier way, like people care about growth, like company care about growth. So the most important data in your company would be like things about revenue, things about user numbers, things about growth. So that would be most valuable things for the company. And if you can like even let the teams understand the holistic view about the holistic view about the business, like for example, the funnel of the marketing, or the funnel to convert users, or the revenue analysis. That's the most valuable thing for the company at the beginning. But if they already done this in their way, like they have software consulting or like spreadsheet or other ways to do that, then you can find different things that can make these things actionable. For example, if they view this in a weekly basis and they view it like weekly and like every week, there's no difference. And what's the value we can add on? Can we provide them different perspective to analysis data? Can we inspire them to do some experiments? So we need to find out the value. Then the company would want to put in the effort to get the value.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit on that, because I think this is I mean, a very good answer in the fact that you have to go back from business first, your business use case, and sometimes you start building a lot of pipelines, but are they still useful actually? You know, is the business still using the output of your pipeline? You know. So you're extracting a lot of data, you're transforming a lot of data, but maybe for nothing. So keeping a relationship tight with your business stakeholders to know if they are really using it, as well as monitoring. I don't know, sometimes, you know, you can get metadata about usage, right, in your BI tools. That can be also a way to know if people are really using your dashboards or reports. But so yeah, so it's a lot of work to basically go over, you know, all of this regularly, like go over all the you know, all the data assets and making sure they are used.
And also, I think just kind of my experience in terms of kind of like the back end kind of infra side, I think it's really easy to kind of get a bit too attached on previous work. And kind of the issue there is you get overburdened by legacy debt. And so, you know, if we're saying, you know, 3 years ago, we spent a lot of time building something. And so, you know, because we spent all that time 3 years ago, you know, and we don't want to have to do all that again, we should just stick with what we have. To be honest, I think that's a wrong view, because, you know, your data practice needs to evolve as your business evolves. And if you're sticking with pipelines and definitions and reports from 3 years ago, sometimes even longer, it's not relevant to the business anymore. So to Jonathan's point, really understanding what users are actually using, how they're using it, and if they're not using it anymore, then well, why not? But also, I think that at least from an analyst perspective, really kind of having as much conversations with stakeholders as possible is the easiest way to speed things up. And I would say, in my experience, that's probably the biggest factor in what slows me down, is not having that discussion. And I think that a lot of it is very much to do with education. If I mean, data questions are so easy to ask, you know, how many people did this, or how much money are we making, or how many times did this thing happen, or what's the percentage of XYZ versus ABC. It's an easy question to ask, and yeah, it's a great question. I agree, that's a fantastic question. But the thing is, if these questions are being asked in the vacuum, in the sense that they're not being, the value of the question is not being judged against the ROI, against the effort that it will take to answer that question, then it makes my job a lot harder. That's for sure. So TT, that's probably one, at least from an analyst perspective, that's my best advice. is to really try to front end the way that so basically put that conversation at the very beginning as often as possible. And to me, this really is a data literacy question. I mean, before I started working in data, I had similar responses like, so what is that? And then, you know, in SCMP, our data people will be like, and then they just ignore me. I'm like, what's going on? You know, but actually, once you really get into it, you realize how difficult it is to answer some of these questions. And also what I'm really surprised by is how uncomfortable people are with ambiguity when it comes to data. I feel kind of lucky because, I mean, my background is psychology and philosophy. And so as part of my degree, I had to take statistics and research methods. And so it's very much, you know, you have a hypothesis, you have your operational definitions, and then, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is the problem with data, I think, is that people actually expect data to be objectively true. And when, you know, two numbers don't add up the way that they're supposed to, it's like, well, wait a second. So you're giving me this now, but a month ago, I asked you a similar question with similar data, and now you're giving me two different answers. And the thing is, I mean, you know, I think that, again, data literacy, we need to be more comfortable with ambiguity in the output. There's that Zen saying, you know, the finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. And I think that that's like the biggest misconception that I'm coming into so often these days, is people actually expect data to be, you know, objective truth, a one-to-one mapping of reality, which unfortunately is just never going to happen. And so that's just an expectation issue, I think, more than anything else.
Yep.
Okay, I don't think we have any more questions from the audience. Jonathan, Karen, any final words, parting nuggets of wisdom you'd like to share?
Can I ask a question about Jonathan's slide? Can you go to the slide about Cube that you do have the Cube cache, Cube schema, or the cache? Yeah. So next time.
This one?
Yeah, this one. So, so you define the granularity as a week and refresh clicks as daily. Then you will cache this number in a weekly basis. Does that mean if you want a monthly or daily things, you need another pre-aggregation schema or not?
So yeah, I can define actually as many like pre-aggregations. Actually, one pre-aggregation maps to one query.
Okay.
So yeah, here it really depends on if I had, imagine, take this pre-aggregation. If I were not to use users but page views instead, what I would do is that I will define one pre-aggregations at day level and reuse that pre-aggregation to compute the weekly page views or compute monthly page views, because it's possible, because it's an additive measure. But Cube really understands that concept of additive and non-additive. It's baked in the core functions of Cube. So here for users, I define week. If I wanted users at month level, I will have to define another query and cache another another file in my cloud storage. It would be generating another file, basically.
I see. Then what's the difference about the pre-aggregation and the real transform?
So that's a good question. So basically here it acts as a table. Actually, my pre-aggregation acts as a table. So I could have created it in BigQuery, right? Like before, like with dbt, I could have done that. But it will defeat the purpose of defining my metrics once. So that's why I'm not doing it. Because here, when I say in the pre-aggregation, you use the measure users, it will always refer to the same definition of users. So all my pre-aggregations will map to that same definition in my schema, which is important for me, right? I don't have to type my SQL code, count distinct user ID. It's a very easy metric if I just say count distinct user ID. In reality, we would have count case when, distinct case when, blah, 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 and many. But yeah, so I don't have to do that, many times. So I just do that once, and then it's very easy to change in the future. If the business says, no, we are not counting users that way. No, you have to, I don't know, like remove the Sunday, I say something, I just make it up, but it's possible, I will know how to do that once, and then it applies to all. But then I will need to recompute all my pre-aggregations. So there's still some data engineering work, but it's not that hard, honestly.
And the cache is cache in Cube, or is the cache exist in BigQuery as a view, or?
So it's actually you have several options. Here we are using actually cloud storage, which is a like file storage service, and so actually Cube will store the data in a Parquet file, which is a file format that is often used for by the data teams. But I could have also used other like storage mechanism. It's just that cloud storage is really and Parquet files. That combination is actually very good for when you have a lot of data. Okay. Otherwise, you can have you can tell Cube to use your native database to cache the data. So yeah, I could have told Cube, okay, create a table in BigQuery to store the pre-aggregation, but it would be less less fast to serve the data.
So your plan is to have all these cache and migrate all your model into Cube, then you can like query directly in Cube. That would be more efficient.
I realize I didn't talk about that during the presentation, but no, we still plan to do all the transformations, most of the transformations with dbt. So we store it in BigQuery, but then we will use only I would say the golden layer of your data, or where the data is already transformed, already clean and transformed. And we use the tables from this layer. We expose those tables to Cube. Right?
Okay.
This is how we do it.
So you need to connect your BI tool with BigQuery and also Cube, and then if you want to get some reports both from Cube and from BigQuery, is that possible in a BI tool?
Sure. Yes, yeah. I foresee some situations where you can't have 100% of your queries served from Cube simply because they are like, maybe there is that edge case that is not properly handled, and that may occur. So far we were happy with the few dashboards that we've migrated to Cube. But yeah, you can always define, because the way it works in dashboards that you can define different data source, right? So which are like data handlers, or the way to connect to your different ways to connect to your data stores. It doesn't matter if you, like in Looker Studio, I can easily tell, okay, this data source is going to feed directly from BigQuery, but this data source is going to use Cube, and then you can even blend your data together at the end.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Awesome. Well, if there's no more questions, I think we'll end it there. Thank you so much, everyone, all the attendees who came, everyone who asked questions. Thank you very much. It's very much appreciated. And of course, thank you to our speakers, Jonathan and Karen, for taking the time this evening to share your knowledge. Keep up with SCMP and with our meetup group. You can go to Meetup and look up the APAC digital and data community on there, and of course also you can reach out to Karen at Alpha Camp, as well as the DBT community in Taiwan. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. See you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.